Look, it took 3 long years, but Bethesda's massive space epic has finally touched down on PlayStation. The question we all have is whether Starfield Free Lanes actually delivers that ultimate sci fi fantasy we've been waiting for since the original launch. Honestly, I had incredibly high hopes for this port. We finally got the brand new Moonjumper vehicle to elevate planetary exploration, alongside a new manual cruise feature meant to smooth out the journey. But here is the unfortunate reality. The creation engine is still struggling heavily under the massive scope of this universe, and the performance issues, they might just completely ruin your interstellar voyage before your ship even manages to leave orbit. Today we are diving deep into Starfield Free Lanes, releasing on April 7th, 2026 for the PlayStation 5, the PlayStation 5 Pro, Xbox Series consoles, and PC. This release is essentially Bethesda's grand welcoming party for the Sony crowd. If you remember playing the original game when it launched back in 2023, or if you jumped back in for that Shattered Space expansion in 2024, you should think of Free Lanes as a massive standalone platform expansion that attempts to reinvent the core loop. It throws an absolute ton of fresh content into the mix. We are talking about the towering new Anchor Point station, which serves as a major hub, an entirely new tier of exotic and legendary loot to chase down across the galaxy, and brand new elite crew members who actually know how to hold their own in a frantic firefight. Plus, this update drops right alongside a brand new $10 premium add-on called the Terran Armada DLC, which introduces its own sprawling campaign and faction battles. Let's break down exactly how this updated package plays in practice. The biggest marketing push from Bethesda revolves around the namesake feature, Free Lanes. It functions essentially as a manual, continuous flight mode for your spaceship during interplanetary travel. You take the stick yourself, actively piloting the ship seamlessly through the system, rather than relying entirely on menus to fast travel to your next destination. Speaking of crafting, the developers have introduced a highly sought-after new resource called X-Tech. This stuff is incredibly valuable. You use X-Tech to extensively customize your ships and your guns, and you can even use it to re-roll those annoying weapon perks over and over until you secure a perfect god roll. And for my fellow hardcore grinders who love maxing out their characters, the New Game Plus loop received a much-needed overhaul. Unlike the original release, where stepping through the Unity meant losing everything you worked for, your hard-earned equipment finally carries over to the next universe. On top of that, you can now directly upgrade your powerful Starborn abilities without being forced to start a New Game Plus run in the first place. There really is a lot to love about the changes here. The absolute best part of this update is the brand new Moonjumper. Piloting this hovering mini spaceship across barren moons and rocky craters is ridiculously satisfying and completely changes the exploration dynamic. It turns what used to be a boring 20-minute hike into a thrilling low-altitude flight. I actually spent about 3 hours just boosting over sand dunes and, I won't lie to you, actively terrorizing the local civilians right in the middle of New Atlantis, causing absolute chaos in major population centers with a high-powered hovercraft is hilarious. Then there is the much appreciated quality of life stuff. The new shared outpost container and the centralized information database are total lifesavers for base builders. I used to absolutely hate playing inventory management games across multiple planets, but now all of my resources are pooled together seamlessly in one spot. Oh, and if you play this update, you absolutely have to recruit Muria Siarkiewicz. She is a newly added companion and is widely considered leaps and bounds more interesting than the original base game crew members. Her dialogue is sharp, her backstory is engaging, and she doesn't constantly judge my moral choices during missions. However, let's talk about the glaring technical flaws and frustrating design choices. Playing on the standard PlayStation 5, I ran into brutal frame rate dips and full-on hard crashes during heavy, effect-laden firefights. Even on the PlayStation 5 Pro, where some reviewers claim you get the absolute best console experience with multiple graphical modes and variable refresh rate support, my personal experience was incredibly unstable. The 60 frames per second performance mode felt highly inconsistent, and the poor frame pacing caused noticeable visual stuttering. Then there is that heavily advertised free lanes system. While it sounds great on paper and reduces some travel friction, it ultimately creates a false illusion of space flight. You are still going to hit a hard loading screen the second you actually want to arrive at your destination, making the whole cruise feature feel like an awkward tacked-on mechanic. I also have to warn you about the Terran Armada DLC. While it does introduce the fantastic, sarcastic robot companion Delta, the community widely agrees the campaign itself is repetitive, padded, and downright dull. You need to be at least level 50 to start it. And the second you boot it up, it forces you immediately into a highly difficult endgame combat. Worse, the DLC relies on a mandatory incursion event system. These random enemy attacks constantly interrupt whatever you are doing. They are incredibly intrusive, and there is absolutely no toggle switch to turn them off. So, what about the actual cost of entry? Bethesda is asking a premium price tag of $70 for the base game on PlayStation, plus another $10 if you want to experience the rather frustrating Terran Armada campaign. That is an $80 investment right out of the gate. If you already own this massive universe on a capable PC or an Xbox Series console, you seriously need to weigh whether jumping ship to Sony's platform makes any sense. For me, dropping nearly $80 on a port that still suffers from significant performance issues, frame drops, and hard crashes is highly questionable when the game is already available elsewhere. I have been scouring the online forums and talking to folks in the wider gaming community, and the overall sentiment right now is completely mixed. The player base is heavily debating whether this game is worth purchasing on PS5 or if it deserves an instant return. A major key theme I keep seeing is sheer frustration with the aging creation engine. You can add fancy rovers, centralized databases, and new lighting systems, but players feel the underlying technical limitations are just baked too deep into the foundation. Because of these lingering issues, there is a very vocal skepticism toward Bethesda's overall update quality. Even with all these genuinely cool new features and quality of life improvements, players are openly doubting the studio's ability to release stable, polished patches. Time for the final verdict. Starfield Free Lanes definitely brings some fantastic quality of life upgrades to the table, and that new Moonjumper vehicle is a genuine blast to drive around, but the entire package is tragically held back by a repetitive and dull DLC, alongside severe performance issues on the PlayStation consoles. My honest advice? Keep your wallet closed for the time being. Hold off on that $70 plunge until Bethesda actively patches out the hard crashes and stabilizes the erratic frame rate. Wait for a deep sale. And before we wrap things up today, a huge shout out to our sponsor, Therion.vip, for supporting the channel and helping us keep the lights on to build these reviews for you. They make awesome gaming apparel that I actually love to wear. I just picked up their latest Fortnite-themed tee, and the design really stands out from the typical merch you see out there. Check out the link in the description to grab your own. Make sure you're having fun out there, and I'll see you in the next one.